Alright, apparently they're saying Natlan is the last chance for Genshin, at least for them. But personally, I feel like they're gonna give a lot of them a last chance, right? But let's go ahead and see their reasoning. I'm curious. Me personally, I actually liked Sumeru, Fountain, although Fountain kind of felt short. And I do look forward to Notland, but I don't think aesthetic wise I'm gonna like it as much, just because it's not really my style. But I'm not gonna base the quality and stuff on that because everyone has their own what you might call it, own opinion on fashion and art and whatnot. So let's go ahead and see.
When I started playing Genshin back in 2020 when it came out, I, and I'm sure many of you, was just incredulous at the fact that it was a gacha game. The majority of gachas back in the 2010s,
Do you guys remember Fischl's machine gun, where you would cancel these shots and it's like da 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 da? Oh, good times.
even the popular ones, had that feel to them where they were like those flash games in the 2000s but into
Monster
mobile form.
Strike. Monster Strike, I believe, was a game I played on like my phone from 2006. iPhone. No, I played it on my iPhone 6S. I think it might have been actually old. No, it wasn't my iPhone 6. Yeah, it was. Wow, that game was old.
You know what I mean? I mean, they started to play around with some visual
Pretty sure it
stuff
was
like
Monster
Live
Strike.
2D and whatnot, but there was
Sheesh.
no way you could put most of those on like the Nintendo Switch. They were just too cheap looking. Then came Genshin Impact, which is a completely full-scale 3D open-world action RPG, and the contrast was completely night and day. The roast
This
intake
is totally random and has nothing to do with the video per se, but like a lot of gacha games where they have like super great art, it's like nice when they have art like that, but also when the gameplay doesn't match up with it, it kind of blows like a lot. Like you saw those like waifus in like the portraits, right? I'm willing to bet that game probably has like mini sprite characters that you run around as. Like I bet the gameplay it blows.
glasses stayed on all the way through version 1, even towards the tail end of it. Just the novelty of the whole experience was a breath of fresh air. And during the time, the only game I actively played was League of Legends, so literally anything would have been an upgrade. 1.6 was one of my fondest patches to date. Possibly because it was the first time we had a new area, albeit temporarily, and also that it was the first time we had new
Wait, oh yeah, okay. They are talking about this one. This one was actually
skins for
one
the
of my favorites, to be honest, as well. And I was so sad when it went. I even thought that like they would bring it back and everything. I was so convinced sniffing the copium only to realize it's never coming back. And it hurt at the time, but also it brings great memories to continuously watch these things in the past. I don't know what it's exactly called now, to be honest, but I'm pretty sure you could find it if you just type in like Genshin Impact Klee Summertime.
game. Overall, it was a bunch of new stuff that came all at once.
That was one
The
of my
excitement
favorite
carried
games.
on over into version 2 and lasted throughout the entire Archon quest,
Senor,
the Dragon's
no!
Final Visit, and Konomiya, and then into Lantern Right. It was kept alive a bit longer.
Lantern Right was also like, oh, that one gave me the feels. There was actually a time when I would use the Lantern Right, like one of the endings. I would use the animation of Lantern Right as well as like Zhongli's like trailer song together as my outro. That's just how much I loved the Lantern Right event.
Via the custom being released towards the latter half of the version, but when summer hit, even though we had the Golden Apple Archipelago,
I still kept the Lantern Right stuff. I still have like 80 of those lanterns where like you go into your inventory and you use it and then it starts floating up into the sky. Yeah, I still have like 80 of those. I use it every now and then.
again, around here is when I feel like the honeymoon phase began to wane for me. Version 3 in Sumeru obviously brought the hype all the way back up, and I very much enjoyed the increase in storytelling quality of the Archon quest, but 3.5 onwards is when I think all of us began to notice a pattern, a monotonous one. Version 4 was the same again, but this time continued interest in the game barely stuck around beyond the Archon quest. It didn't help that winter and spring of this year coincided with attention towards Starro being at an all-time high.
That is true. A lot of the stuff is really around the Archon quest, and I'm actually still like that, to be honest. Like, I did like I watched the first part of the summertime event. You know, the one with like the fairy tale and that stuff. I I could not bring myself to watch any more than like the first part of it. I haven't seen the other parts. I just there's something where it's like it's because I know it's like a filler that I don't want to like watch it, even if it's like a good story and stuff. Same thing happens to me with animes and stuff, since it's like it's not part of the timeline, quote unquote. It's like a branch off in the timeline. And I guess that's why I don't really invest too much into it. Like I do want to watch more this summer. And like if enough people push for it, I'll definitely watch it. But right now I'm just been like I could just put it off till later, maybe, probably never. And just I kept putting it off and it's been like it feels like I think it's a week now since the other part came out and I just haven't attempted.
Although in fairness, that game is still in its own honeymoon phase, not being much older than a year.
Good
Though
spot.
Genshin is still
Good
very
part. Good part. Jade, good.
popular with a dedicated fan base, fractured as it may be. For my money, the continual decline of player interest, in conjunction with the multitude of other equally influential factors, puts the game at a crossroads. With Natlan soon to arrive in August to mark the 5th version and subsequent 5th
I'm
years
super excited for Natlan's characters, the ones that have like those mobility things. Like instead of just being like a dash thing that they had in like Fontaine in the earlier versions, this one's more like they're adding another character that's like Mona, but like you can actually see the animation. It's not just invisible water droplets. And then also like a spinning top, which I think is cool.
service. Today I wanted to discuss the current state of
Himiko.
Genshin Impact and how version 5 marks a do or die moment for the game's future. But before we talk about Natlan, I want to talk about something else. This video is sponsored by Talkie, an AI social network where you can chat with all your
Nope, don't care. All right, let's go on ahead. I actually have no idea how far this goes. Is this still part of it?
speaking to your favorite characters. You can even...
Okay, that's AI. Here we go.
Thanks again to Talkie for sponsoring the video, but for now, back to our discussion on Natlan. Saying that Hoyo had a cosmic streak of luck would be the understatement of the decade. Genshin Impact's success had every bit to do with circumstance as it did with the intended market appeal of the game. First off, like I prefaced, the production quality and overall budget for Genshin was beyond unprecedented for a game of its type. Most gacha games at the time had that cheap or minimalistic look to them, being strictly intended for mobile devices.
Which was really sad, because like I was always dreaming of a game like Genshin for like gacha games, but also it's still a gacha game, which kind of blows. But I like the luck element, quote unquote. I like the RNG element of like what character you get, and that's also another reason why I would never spend like any cash in these games. The whole fact is like, yes, you can, let's say, boost your RNG by spending more cash until you get the person you want guaranteed. But that's not fun to me. What's fun to me is like working towards a goal and then maybe having a side goal of getting like a new character. It's not like a must-have kind of situation.
Which you can see via its predecessor Honkai Impact 3rd. Hoyo went the extra mile with Genshin though, while the
I
game
will say though, Honkai Impact 3rd now kind of blows. Like, it was fun at the time, but the game is like, I'm too used to the formula, I guess. Like, I'm sure if you're still new, then you'll be like, oh yeah, this is great. But then like after you play it for a while, then you're gonna be like, I don't really want to play anymore. And that's where I'm at in like Honkai Impact.
has a simplistic anime look. If you took out all the mechanics that tie to being a gacha game, namely the
Elon.
boss system and resin, it could have very easily passed as a standalone open world action RPG, or potentially even an MMO. I personally think it would have been awesome for this game to be an MMORPG, but I understand why they didn't. The game was intended to appeal to as wide of an audience as possible, evidenced by a combination of being available...
Oh, there's that shark lady, the one that I was talking about. The one where it's like she can actually go on top of the water, I believe, like riding on a shark or something. And it looks really cool. So she's kind of like Mona then, right? It's just you can actually see her.
across all platforms, mobile, console, and PC, having a low day-to-day maintenance requirement, and
Which
fairly
is weird because she
predictable
looks
depth
like a
compared
bunny.
to more intricate open-world games, making it more casual-friendly. Secondly, the budget. Genshin Impact is at present
Just,
the single most
just
expensive video game.
that was cute. Just watching her like go away on like a spinning Beyblade.
Genshin Impact is at present the single most expensive video game ever produced, with most of the costs coming down to marketing. Back when the game came out, you found advertisements literally everywhere. Trains, stations, airports, city billboards, buses, pop-up shops, promotions on display TVs, collaborations.
I want to see one of these pop-up things in real life. Like, that is a dream of mine. But I feel like I would only be able to see that if I went to like Japan or something. Ugh, I feel like that would be so good, like anywhere, to be honest. That looks like such a cool material thing to have.
Big brands of all types, Lawson, Domino's, Pizza Hut, Samsung, Razer, Gongcha. Hoyo was determined to shove as much Genshin in your face as humanly possible. But what really compounded all of this to propel the game to new heights was, of course, the fact that they had a captive audience. The world was gradually recovering from the pandemic, but it wasn't until I would say late 2022 or early 2023.
Well, I think like the fact that they shoved it into our faces so often too definitely plays a big part. But they also did it with like good vibes, right? There's just like good vibes since the pandemic like put everyone in like a more negative mood, but they're like so vibrant and like yeah, they're just like so vibrant compared to what was happening around, which felt so gray, which caused the game to like be looked upon on like a better light too.
When everything went back to normal. So for the entire first 2 years of the game, everyone was mostly stuck at home, looking for things to do, and being released at the tail end of 2020 was nothing short of perfect timing. The success of Genshin Impact is
How
a
convenient.
once-in-a-generation occurrence. It's become so mainstream that doubtless you'll find a person who doesn't know of it at all, or at the very least doesn't recognize the character from the prolific amounts of fan art, merchandise, and advertising we see across the world. For all intents and purposes, it single-handedly popularized the gacha sector from a niche part of the gaming world to a global industry. Things have changed a lot in the past 4 years, even though it feels like time has been frozen since 2020. In the gacha industry, it's exceedingly rare for a title to survive more than 5 years without either a significant decline in
I don't
player
like those fights. The one where it's like you just fight to get like a high score and it's continuous. I don't like those.
base or an outright shutdown of service. Every so often when you check the gacha gaming subreddit, there's news of a game shutting down. Those that survive past that typically do so by branching out and expanding on
Mind
their
your record shut down. Really? Noah's Heart. Oh, that was a good one too. Near Reincarnation, SEA. Right, Near Reincarnation. Reincarnation. I can't seem to put my finger on what game that is. I know it's like Near Automata, right? It's like one of the Near series, but I don't think I've ever seen that game.
fans. Arknights, Azure Lane, Epic 7, Grand Blue Fantasy, Blue Archive, although Blue Archive is younger than Genshin, or by capitalizing on an existing brand. Fire Emblem Heroes, Final Fantasy's many gacha spin-offs, Fate Grand Order, Dragon Ball Z Dokkan Battle, Pokemon Masters, what have you. Genshin Impact is no exception to this. Like I said, they've become a household name in the gaming world and especially in the anime community. The meteoric rise of Genshin has set a precedent for every other gacha title to compete against, sparking a period between 2021 and 2023 where it felt like everyone and their mothers was trying to replicate that success.
Tower Fantasy, oh, feels bad.
Tony Stark was bragging about how he's just so far ahead of the times that the entire rest of the world will take 10 years to catch up. That was basically Genshin Impact. Some have chosen to merely
That's weird. I don't remember that part in any of the Iron Man movies.
the production quality of the game, while others have directly tried to challenge it head-on, failing quite miserably in the process, most notoriously of which
Maybe it
being
wasn't
Tower of
even-
Fantasy, which has never managed to shake off the court of public opinion, calling it a Genshin knockoff.
I have not ever seen any of these scenes for Towers of Fantasy. What the heck is all this? That looks nice, but like, how come I've never seen any of this? On top of, why did the game not feel like this?
Less to say, Hoyo's chokehold over the mainstream gacha world was so immense that no one could even hold a candle to it. So they took matters into their own hands and created their own competition, Honkai Star Rail. The two games aren't of the same genre, but they offer the same gacha experience, the same progression and grind, and quote-unquote lifestyle. Despite belonging to the same company, Hoyo's two flagship titles were vying for player attention, placing Genshin under new scrutiny and elevated standards, especially when accounting for the mountain of quality of life improvements.
I think that's actually pretty awesome. Like, they're basically paying another part of themselves. Well, I wouldn't call it themselves, but they took it under to themselves. But so they're basically paying others to compete with them in order so like they can keep going to new heights. So there's continuously new improvements and stuff, which I think is super duper cool. I personally don't like one game too much more than the other. Maybe that's a good thing, to be honest, because that just means they're both doing well or bad. Probably well. But basically, I lost my train of thought, so we're just gonna continue.
Gameplay expansions and such being put into Honkai Star Rail, consequently resulting in players losing their rose-tinted glasses and growing more critical of Genshin's flaws and deficiencies. Not to say players haven't been complaining before, we most certainly did, but like how I say with characters, to be popular you either have to be the best option and or the only option. Genshin was both, for a time. Though the
Oh,
majority
Bennett. Always Bennett. Always Bennett. I don't like Bennett, and I never will.
Poyo's community is active on both titles. A relevant number of players have dropped Genshin altogether in favor of Honkai Star Rail, and there have been tensions between the two games ever since the latter's release.
I will say, though, I don't know when the meta started, but I've never been a part of the meta for any of these kinds of games. Like, in Genshin Impact, I have never used my Bennett. I know, that's absurd. I would just use the characters I wanted to kind of use, but like I still had to like play around elements and stuff and like hard like heavy impact kind of things to like break stuff. Besides like the regular formula of like range, heavy impact, and elements covering for the area so you can continue and progress, I did not play for the damage meta. I couldn't care less for that, as well as like the rewards that you get for doing it, because like let's say the next event rolls around, it would still be just the same thing again, but rather I'd rather spend that time doing something else instead of spending all my time on Genshin just to play a meta. Like I want to be able to have more diversity in my life, you know? So that's why I stay away from the metas in Genshin Impact. But I also do understand why people go for the metas in Genshin Impact. Although it's not really that competitive.
Although we now have Wuthering Waves, which many have speculated might be just big enough to be a worthy match for Genshin Impact. Line 2, Genshin is a more casual, exploration-oriented game, while Wuthering caters to more hardcore combat.
Yep. I was gonna say, though the games are kind of similar, their core experience is a bit different. Like, the fact that Wuthering Waves is more combat-based and less of the exploration, because, for instance, the new area, I think it's called 1.1, like the winter area, the zone's not very big, kind of. Well, it's a little big, right? But like story-wise and whatnot, there was like almost no side quest. It was more focused on the explore to fight and combat. Even the events that was for 1.1 was more for fighting than anything, which I thought was pretty cool because it's refreshing, since in Genshin they kind of just like shove exploration and living a life of like a story, which I kind of don't like because that's not really my style. I can't really sit still enough for Genshin. So I could see why some people would like Wuthering more than Genshin, or Genshin more than Wuthering.
Centric elements, and I myself have never really subscribed to the Genshin killer narrative. It is possible for two similar games to coexist, and it may even be beneficial to give players a reference.
Oh, I'm still sad I didn't choose female rover.
Therein lies the reason why Natlan is make or break. Genshin Impact
I want
is no
him.
longer the only option, nor is it the best. No matter what type of player you are, whether you want to play only one game or if you're cool with playing multiple gachas, players will subconsciously lean closer to whichever game is most engaging.
I don't really hear much thought about Zone Zero though, sadly. There's apparently something about dev talk. I don't know anything about it though. I'm sure there's like a video somewhere I can look at, but until then I just don't really know. I kind of play the game every now and then. I haven't actually logged in today, funny enough. like at the time of this recording, I actually am not using my energy. Uh, I I just basically didn't log in. The only game I've logged into right now for like quote unquote daily was Wuthering Waves. I I'm not doing Honkai Star Rail. I'm not doing Zenless Zone Zero. I'm not doing Genshin Impact. It's like I'm so tired of like having to like go and play in order to progress. Like in the way of um do dailies to progress, I should say. That's not really my style. It's more like I want to be able to pick up the game whenever to progress, rather than you got to pick it up multiple times and then wait for like the next drop in order to progress. It's so much it's just a lot of work. Same thing applies to MMORPGs for me personally, which is why I quit Final Fantasy 14 after playing it for like 3 or 2 years. Like I would play that game every day, but then the dailies and the weeklies and stuff also like just made me lose interest. And that's not even a gacha game. I don't know why I'm talking about it. I'm getting off track.
And entertaining, gradually caring less and less about the others. They might log on actively to take care of dailies and whatnot, but they won't have
Oh,
as much
he's talking about dailies now.
emotional investment, meaning they might show less interest in going beyond that. They could be pulling for new characters, going to real life events, buying merchandise.
Wait, I saw my favorite character.
Meaning they might show less interest in going beyond that. They could be pulling for new characters.
Oh, Chaska. That's her name. Sheesh. Kanish as well. Oh, am I in the way? I think I'm in the way. I'm standing in front of it, huh? Yeah, Kanish right here. The guy that kind of looks like he came from like Yu Yu Hakusho. I want him. I want her. I want her. And maybe the Archon. Just maybe.
Going to real life events, buying merchandise, watching videos and content of it, etc. It's like when every parent says they don't have a favorite child and that they love all their children equally.
That is a lie, and we all know it. They do not love all the children equally.
They want to admit it or not, every parent has a favorite child, even if it's only a ratio of 51-49. Players are the same. As someone who plays Genshin HSR and Wuthering, I want to say I have an equal...
Trust me, there's like 5 of us, and the ratio is more like 5 to 80.
Appreciation for all of them, but in reality, I care so
I don't know how ratios work, I'm sorry.
I'm sure those of you who also play all 3 feel the same way. I suppose 4 now that we have Zenless Zone 0. Back in version 2, you could notice a decent drop in player attention due to the summer update being almost entirely filler. But since Genshin was the only mainstream gacha game at the time, they stuck around and partook in the event even if it wasn't all that fun. But when Honkai Star Rail came out during the spring of 2023, there was now a game of equal measure that could essentially poach players, even if again it was under the same company. Talks about how Hoyo's own games are competing against each other ran rampant. Exacerbating all of this was the fact that unlike version 2, which featured the custom expansion...
You know what I'm kind of sad they didn't do, but they did do for Honkai Impact? Remember when Genshin like kind of first came out? They did a crossover with themselves for Honkai Impact. I thought that was actually really cool. And I kind of wish they would do that for every single one of their games, where they would cross collaborate with themselves in each universe. Like, instead of just showing like Easter eggs and stuff, I kind of want a collaboration in each one too.
To keep us entertained throughout the early summer, version 3 had almost nothing of interest. Well, technically that's not true. 3.6 oversaw an expansion on Sumeru's desert, but hardly anyone cared because it was just more desert. Many simply went to play Honkai Star Rail until version 4.
That's actually true. I actually skipped the desert area.
Now, to be fair, version 4 featured a pretty good story and tons of interesting new characters to further develop the roster, but around this time it became evident that Hoyo's formulaic approach to the game was failing to retain player interest. It managed to do so in the past when there was no competition, but now there is, and said competition is making players realize just how much they let Hoyo get away with. Version 4 was good in many ways, but it was also easily the most contentious version for the game to date. On top of there being finally relevant competition in the mainstream gacha sector, the
I still think they need a skip button for the story. Like, if they do that, then people that do like the story will watch the story, but then also like people like me that don't really want to deal with the story and maybe deal with it later kind of thing. I feel like that's a good system. Like Wuthering Waves has it. I think that's pretty cool. And yeah, I always usually end up watching it again anyways, like the story stuff. It's just like not at the time of playing because I just want to get to the end and like, or not get to the end. I just want to like explore. I just want to be able to explore, which is like a nice feature. Genshin's like Genshin is story plus exploration, while Wuthering Waves is combat and exploration, and I lean more on the combat and exploration side than I do story and exploration.
Disrespectful absence of meaningful rewards for both the 3rd anniversary and the 4th Lantern Rite event bred a fair bit of resentment among players, notably when compared to the rewards and compensation offered by competing titles. Though I often say it as a joke because I think it's funny, the Genshin could never meme isn't entirely baseless. Some players genuinely feel like Koyo has grown complacent with Genshin, believing they could do whatever they want or do nothing, and
You know, I have Venti, right? And I've come to notice something. I haven't been able to use Venti too often in like the newer contents. I haven't been able to use him since Sumer slash Fontaine. Like a lot of the enemies just have like super armor now, so he kind of feels useless, which makes me feel so sad. I mean, there's diverse enemies too, but like, dang, I wish his toolkit was a little different. If if it's not gonna even work, you know what I mean?
players will still play. Like I said, while most players actively play both Genshin and Star Rail, there are players who quit Genshin and permanently jumped ship, and never looked back. Furthering that contention was a recent controversy with the Imaginarium Theater game mode. After waiting years for something else to grind for besides Spiral Abyss, first impressions for Imaginarium have been extremely divisive.
I actually haven't tried this because I hated Spiral Abyss. Like I do not care for my Primo gems because I'm at that point in my gaming life where it's like I don't care for the cash stuff if I'm not gonna even play the game. Like I'm at that point. And I'm the point before that, like I said, is I don't even spend money, right? So there's just like, okay, well, cash isn't like my priority in these games. My priority is like good gameplay mechanics and like the core game experience and the journey I'm going to have. If the journey is just a repeat or something that's slightly different by like a statistical standpoint and not like actual like appeal, then I'm just gonna be like, nope, no thank you, and then I just take a break.
So, with endgame players feeling like it's more of a gimmick than a challenge, and the game mode inherently locking new players
Yeah,
out from
gimmick,
even
that's a good word
attempting
for
due
it.
to character constraints. It's true that anything is better than nothing, but once again, after seeing Honkai Star Rail's massively successful
I will say, even though it's better than nothing, I still think that doesn't give you the that shouldn't give you enough reason to go back to the game. Like you shouldn't have to feel like you should be jumping onto the game. You should only jump on to like de-stress from IRL stuff or something, or to enjoy your time, not like playing because you kind of have to. That's where you draw the line of that's an addiction. So you should probably like, do something else. You don't have to quit the game completely. You just have to look at it in a different perspective.
pure fiction game mode, and all the other ways they managed to make HSR's otherwise fairly repetitive gameplay more entertaining, Divergent Universe, Swarm Disaster, Golden Games, Apocalyptic Shadow, and such, you would think
Actually, I take back for the Swarm list. That one was actually good.
would produce something equally as creative and enjoyable, considering Genshin's combat has so much more room for development and exploration. That might explain why people are so disappointed with the Imaginarium Theater. They had 4 years to give the community something, anything. Were it released in version 2 or something, people may have been less critical towards it because there was nothing to compare it to, but now there is. In light of this, anything resulting in frustration, dissatisfaction, or resentment will not only make people dislike.
Personally, I don't know how many of you guys played Honkai Impact, but you know how like they bring in different kind of game modes and stuff, or like some of like the past ones. I think if they did more of that in Genshin, which they kind of did at one point, which was like collect coins, like parkour, if they did more stuff like that and instead of just like a second type of Spiral Abyss. I think if they brought like different gameplay modes, even if it's like casual, like Mario Party esque, I personally believe the game would do so much better. Like, I would not be surprised if they did a Genshin Party. Genshin Party. Genshin Party. Genshin Party 6, quote unquote. So, like, if they did something like that, but like in a casual way, not too hardcore and stuff, just to test the waters, like as an event first, and then bring it out permanently, I think that'd be pretty neat. So there's some game modes that people would love, but just don't play because like they didn't have the time at the time. I don't know if hide and seek is one of them, but we're gonna use an example. I missed one of the hide and seek things. They continuously bring it back. People love the event, but I honestly think if they made like if they did something like in the teapot or something that was like similar, like a game zone where you can bring friends and like play them, you know what I mean? If you could like play hide and seek, if they have like a machine that like teleports you in like the Serenade teapot to like a game mode, I think that'd be pretty cool. You just like select the game mode, like, oh, this one's, what do you want to play? Hide and seek or like this weird parkour one, and then like you decide on it, and then it brings you into like a custom games. I think that would be pretty neat. Instead of just having to wait until there's an event and then you have to log on in order to play the event you want to play. I think if they were to add that, more players would stick around. Of course, the impact of the event itself is going to go down the drain a bit, but the difference is one of them still gives rewards.
Like Genshin Impact and want to play it less, but it may also cause them to potentially seek alternatives that do satisfy them. Furthermore, not counting exploration, which has always been top-notch, the daily experience of Genshin Impact has not evolved at all since the day the game came out, leading players to become burned out or bored. Though we've received a consistent flow of new units, new enemies, and new areas, barring the Dendro element, everything else in Genshin feels the same. There haven't been any new systems, mechanical expansions, new playstyles, or reason to really do anything more than the bare minimum. Much of which, of course, is because of there being no endgame content beyond Spiral Abyss. Now, if you're more the exploration type, then Genshin's still pretty much uncontested, but gameplay, progression, and combat oriented.
I just realized the green part, I don't know if the, oh, that's a bad spot. The green part slash blue part of the guy's hat. Oh, it's a shark. The green slash part, like his bandana, I think it had like emission on it. It looked pretty neat.
Expectations have increased. The competition has caught up to Genshin, both from within Hoyo's own portfolio and from without. Despite being part of the same company, Honkai Star Rail has taken a non-negligible chunk of interest away from Genshin Impact permanently, and while it's too soon to cast judgment on Zenless Zone Zero, there might also be a chance they'll take some players away too. Outside of Hoyo, we have Wuthering Waves. Once more, I don't want to encourage the narrative of Genshin.
I do think Zenless Zone Zero, the game, is like, what's it called? It's diverse, but it doesn't know what it wants to be. It has everything, which is kind of nice in its own way. It reminds me of like the Persona games, which I really like. I'm a fan of Persona, but not everyone's a fan of Persona. It's not like a big topic. It's widely known, sure, but it's not something people will continuously keep playing, and that's why Persona themselves have like so many different versions of the game too, like Persona Strikers and whatnot, or like that Persona fighting game and whatnot. It's because the formula of the original does not stay long, because that one's just the diverse aspect of like other games that it could be, you know? And I feel like Zenless Zone Zero is going to go the same way.
Killer. I believe both games have their place, but that being said, competition is still competition, and Wuthering is definitely a wake-up call for Genshin to realize that autopiloting through every year just isn't going to cut it. Then in the foreseeable future, we have Azure Promilia, an open-world gacha just like Genshin that's being developed by Manzu, the same publisher.
I've never heard of this.
Which has been wildly successful for the past 7 years. for uh, research purposes. This will be their attempt at capturing some of the open world RPG gacha market. Arknights is also releasing their own open world RPG, Enfield, which
I
is
have
more
not
of
heard
a
of these.
Xenoblade-esque real-time RPG instead of action, but very much after the same audience, give or take. Then we have Project Mugen. There's a myriad of 3D gacha games coming out in the next year or two with the same budget, production quality, and ambitions that Genshin once had back in 2020. While it's highly unlikely that any of them will reach the same monumental.
Okay, so the only one I know of is NTE, Neverness to Everness. That's the only one I know out of these. I even missed the names he said, but if someone knows which one I should check out, then please, 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 please leave it in the comments. I want to see these things, but my brain is pretty smooth, so yeah, I need it written down so I don't forget.
Success that Genshin did. The point is, there's competition. Hoyo is no longer the only fish in the sea. At the start of every new version,
Fish in the
players will
sea.
flock back to Genshin Impact and check out the new region, the new characters, the new story, and of course the new art.
Sedgeween in the
Hoyo will
sea.
be able to keep their attention is another matter entirely. Every past version, sustained interest in the game has diminished faster and faster. Players are fine through version 1 to 1.6.
When
but in
Mom
version 2, apart
pulls
from
out the
gacha
chancla.
market, 2.5, 2.6, and 2.8 were pretty quiet for most people. Then in version 3.5 all the way to 3.8, there was a noticeable drop in attention for the game, especially
It's a
given
battle
the
for
release
your
of
life.
Honkai Star Rail. And for version 4, I feel like people stopped caring as early as 4.3. From what we know of Natlan so far, and based on the release of Imaginarium Theater,
I will say, I don't know when she released, but when she released this character right here, I can't remember her name for some odd reason, but her story quest, I actually like that a lot. I like D&D stuff very much so. Albeit I've never played D&D myself, I would always listen to podcasts or play Baldur's Gate or Divinity, and I had like a good time with those. So being able to see that was refreshing in Genshin, but I didn't see a lot of people like look up to that, which made me a little sad. But because like if not a lot of people look forward to that, that means there's not going to be more of that later in the future, and that's why I'm sad. Not because other people have a different opinion. It's more the fact that like because of the opinion being so different from my own, I'm not going to see something like that again.
Hoyo is clearly aware they can no longer procrastinate on innovation. If they go above and beyond and totally reinvent the game from a combat and progression standpoint, it might help the game survive through all the barrage of new 3D open world games and hold on to its position as the flagship of the gacha industry. However, patience is growing thin among the community. The most diehard fans will stick around, but everyone else will be quick to jump to it.
I don't know. I was a pretty diehard fan too, but I still jumped ship at day 364. It's actually funny because the story I have about it, I've played Genshin every single day since day 1 of the 364 days in a row. And you know what actually made me decide to stop? It was the fact that I almost hit it for a whole year. And I was like, if I hit this year, then I am actually going to end up trying to play again for the next year. So I stopped my addiction at 364 just so that I could be like, yeah, I didn't hit it for a year. Mentally, it's practically a year and everything, but like, thanks to that, I was able to put down the game and just enjoy my time with whatever I'm doing.
Different game if and when something more entertaining comes out. Natlan may very well be Genshin Impact's final chance to turn things around. I apologize for the very, I guess, heavy tone with this video. I know my many criticisms towards Genshin may give off the impression that I hate it, but I very much love this game and want what's best for it. I mean, for crying out loud, it's part of my livelihood. I, more than most people, want this game to succeed. Don't get me wrong, I love Honkai Star Rail and Wuthering Waves, and I'm very much looking forward to seeing other gachas.
Okay, I think he's just talking about the end of the end, so that's fine. But yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed my thoughts and opinions as well to this. It was very long. I probably talked more than I should have, to be honest, and I apologize. I just had so much built up, and some things I'm sure did not make sense than others. Some parts I'm pretty sure I stopped talking and changed subjects, but I'm pretty sure that's because I don't have any medicines to keep me focused. But yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this, and I'll see you guys next time with more Genshin Impact, I think it's called. I think it's just Genshin Impact. No, we'll just call it Gotcha Games. Yeah. Okay. Bye.